Izzy Heltai. Thanks so much, man, for joining us.
Sweet. Thanks for having me, Sean. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been listening to the new LP, Father. Really cool. I'm interested in hearing the story behind that. But before we talk about that, why don't you just take us back and tell us how you got into music in the first place?
How I got into music, man. So I think the classic story of it's like my parents put me in piano lessons from a really early age to
Nice.
learn some techniques, some classical skills. I was about 4 years old. I was really bad. I hated practicing.
Uh-huh.
Had a wonderful like. I feel like the majority of people I knew that took classical piano lessons either had like a Russian or a Ukrainian, like really severe teacher. And I also did. So it was like I had this wonderful Ukrainian woman and she was so good at piano, but she was like pretty strict and would always get on me because I never practiced. And the only other kids that would like take classes from her were like all these Russian kids. And so we were like the one family that like did not speak Russian or Ukrainian. It was pretty funny. But anyways, she was awesome. But yeah, so that's kind of like how I started playing music initially. Both my sister and I did it. I did that until I was like 12. And because, at that point when you're getting in your teenage years, you're like, that's not cool anymore, Mom. I want to play Green Day songs. And so I took up the electric guitar.
All right.
And yeah, that's when I started doing that.
Sounds very familiar. Sounds not too dissimilar from my upbringing.
Yeah.
Minus the strict Russian teacher. I had a couple just easygoing teachers. But yeah, quickly uninterested in playing whatever were in those music books and wanted to play some power chords and all that.
I know, right? That's how I feel. I'm like, I want to have my guitar like down to my knees, play like
exactly.
one power chord, and have an SG.
Yeah,
right.
I remember trying to, I remember trying to, because when I started playing guitar, that was like you said, that was the whole style was trying to wear your guitar as low as possible,
I
like
know, right?
all those cool bands in the '90s and everything, like Green Day and Nirvana and everyone like Blink when they had it like down to their knees somehow. And I remember just thinking it was really difficult. And a cousin of mine who played guitar, I was telling him how hard it was to play that way. And he was like, dude, just play it, man. He was like, don't worry about what it looks like. So from then on, just from my cousin saying, dude, just play it. So from then on, I put my guitar up to where I could actually comfortably play it. And since then I haven't cared. But I know exactly what you mean. Do you still play that way?
Oh my God, no, I was going to say, it's funny you mentioned that because I feel like especially when I was like, as a folk singer, I went the hard opposite where now I have like this small parlor guitar and I like hold
wear
it
like
up,
as high as possible.
as high as possible.
That's now the hipster way,
Yeah, right.
Up, like,
exactly. So I went the hard other
or
way. Yeah, absolutely.
So you start playing guitar, and is that what you were playing at first, like rock and roll at first, kind of like punk rock stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, like I said, definitely like Green Day stuff. Like I just wanted to learn how to play rock and roll and like, whatever Beatles song I wanted. But then it kind of spiraled into it. In my teenage years, it's like I was really listening to a lot of songwriters from like the 60s. It's what I grew up listening to. And after kind of like being like a young teenager being like, I want to listen to like kind of punk rock and roll. I kind of just like fell in love with Simon and Garfunkel again and Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez. And quickly I kind of realized like with my guitar playing, I wasn't really interested in like theory or scales. I just cared about songs. And so that's kind of like when I started really kind of abandoning like actually technically learning an instrument and just kind of learning an instrument to use it for what I wanted to do, which was writing songs.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned kind of 60s songwriter influence, because I definitely hear that in your music, and that's the influence that I hear when I was listening to the new album Father. So so is that's in high school? You're kind of you're playing around and you already kind of know that you want to go in this direction. Where does it go from there? Where do you remember some of the first times you maybe took some steps to maybe play live or maybe actually do some decent recordings?
Yeah, well, decent recordings I was far off from
Uh-huh.
in high school, but yeah, I mean, the first times I was playing live were at open mics in high school. I had a really cool supportive music community. And it's funny actually,
Mm.
like the guy I was playing with, my friend Micah, is still now I guess almost like 10 years later after I guess basically 10 years after our freshman year of high school, he's still like, my closest bandmate and like who I do everything with still. I lived with him
Nice.
for 2 years, these past 2 years, but his name's Micah. But anyways, yeah, so we started out playing like Avett Brothers covers at like our high school open mics. And then it's always funny when people ask me this because like I'm not really sure when playing out and writing songs like solidified in my mind as like what I want to do with my life, but there just became a point where I was like, well, I don't think I know how to do anything else,
Mm.
or have much interest in doing anything else.
Right.
But it's like my first gigs out were like at the coffee shop across the street from my college when I was like 18. And
Hmm.
then I just kind of started trying to do it more and more. And then, yeah, it kind of spiraled into like me wanting to do it with the rest of my life.
And so you playing live at near college, and what's nice about your music is I feel like you do have a variety of places you could play it. You could play it at a regular venue, or you could play it at someplace more mellow, like a coffee shop. And so at what point was it, sometime in college then, where you were like, okay, I need to maybe sit down and record some of these in a manner that people will want to listen to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like once you're booking yourself and you're like, oh, people want to take home something or see what you're about. And it kind of just started like, I guess it probably started at the end of high school, kind of just like in my buddy's house, like recording stuff. And I never really had much interest in like recording or being in a studio, unlike like I feel like a lot of kids my age were like growing up with GarageBand and like figuring out production stuff as teenagers. And I
Hmm.
had never had any interest. Like what I thought music was like one guy and a guitar, like I, aspired to be. I mean, I have my feelings about Bob Dylan, but the
Hmm.
fact and the idea of someone kind of mesmerizing like a stadium full of people with just a guitar
Yeah.
is like a really cool thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I think my goals have shifted a bit since I was a teenager, but I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I thought it was the purest way that music was kind of received. So I was kind of averse to being in studio or like fancy recording stuff. So
Hmm.
I didn't really like step into a studio until like my sophomore year of college. So I was like 19. I was gigging out. I like made like kind of a live EP with a band I was playing with at the time. And yeah, and then I kind of just kept pumping out EPs yearly, usually until this past record, which was my first record, which was like kind of the first time I really felt prepared to kind of release songs in this capacity and
Yeah.
like in this
So you
collection.
had some, and I totally agree. I've always thought it's very cool for piano. One of the reasons I think piano is so cool too is it's a whole orchestra in front of you, and so those who can perform solo well on a piano or with an acoustic guitar or something like that, it's just so awesome because they're just a lone entity who can all of a sudden be a concert wherever they go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so it sounds like you had some, a lot of practice time putting out singles and EPs here and there, and yeah, the new LP is a great collection of songs, and just like a really solid and consistent vibe to it. So tell me a little bit about that LP and what made that a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of just like most of the songs were written on this like kind of 2.5 like I would say quote unquote tour, but it
Hmm.
was more of like a glorified road trip. I was still playing music every night, but really the idea of it was like I was just going places I'd never gone before. And
Hmm.
like it was more like that I just wanted to see a lot of the country I'd never seen. That I'm like, I'm gonna play like great shows because the majority of them it's like I would play at a brewery or a coffee shop just to like make enough money to get to the next place. And I was
Yeah.
like sleeping in national parks. And so it was this incredible transformative summer I had of like 2.5 months on the road. And I met the coolest people. And and so I wrote a lot of these songs on that trip during this time where I just felt like I was kind of changing as a person so much. And
Yeah.
then some of them, these songs are like older and kind of have been with me for like my entire trajectory as a songwriter, which was cool. But yeah, so it was kind of after that summer, I finally felt ready to be like, I've been doing this in a certain way for a decent amount of time. I think it's time to like, take this step and then
Hmm.
possibly launch wherever it's going to be going. Because I feel like having a full record out is a good base for whatever's going to happen next.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that sounds like an awesome time. So did you contact a lot of these places ahead of time, like a typical tour where you kind of said, "Hey, can I play here?" Or were you doing some of this spontaneously, like, "Hey, I'm in town. I'm going to go walk
oh no,
over to
it
this
was
coffee
absolutely, it
shop
was like I
or
spent
brewery."
like, it was like I left for 2.5 months in May, and it was like I was reaching out to people in like starting in September to try to figure this out because I was going places like I was in like the middle of nowhere in Wyoming, or
Mm,
like I really wanted to go far out and kind of like see, like I had always done like DIY tours and
mm.
like fortunately like I work with people now, but it was like that's how I always did it, was just like cold calling places and
Yeah.
just like figuring it out. So that was like my bread and butter. And it's like I'm very used to like very bad shows because of that. Or like sometimes, I mean, like very sparse, weird things in
Sure.
places you've never been.
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, it's weird and sometimes sad and hard, but like you builds character, right?
Yeah. Hey, but
Um,
like you said, you were just on a trip. You just so happen to be playing while you're on your trip. It's
but yeah, so I booked it out like a normal tour, but it was like, there were some places like when I was in like, let's say like Walsenburg, Wyoming, or
mhm.
like, it's like places where it's like I'll reach out to places and they're like, yeah, you can play here, but also we don't usually do music. And how did you find us? And
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know,
You're right.
actually.
Well, that is, again, that's one of the cool things about being, the singer-songwriter type. You can roll into virtually any space and make it a concert without, disturbing too many people's sensibilities one way or the other. You know what I mean? So they either love it or they're just like, "Hey, this is pleasant music in the background." Um, it sounds, I like this idea that you were sleeping in national parks too along the way. That's cool. So were you camping? Did you just sleeping in your car? What were you doing?
Yeah, so I was always sleeping in my car. I kind of built like this bed frame in the back of my Subaru.
Nice.
That yeah, I'm like a very not handy person, so it was kind of like a miracle and like my pride and joy that I like finagled this like bed frame. It was awesome. So it took up like half the storage space in my car, and there was storage underneath and storage on the side of it. So I slept there most nights, especially like, I was in places. Well, I did a leg in Canada and I did that with a friend, and so it was still quite cold there in May, so we stayed with people. But besides that, when I was, out, what I love being outside and I love hiking and I love camping. So it like works for me that it's like I don't have to plan where I'm staying. I either stay in my car or I also have like a great tent when it's like at a national park. And yeah, so I got to see like places I'd never seen before and probably would have never been able to see in that way if not for
Yeah.
traveling in this
I'm
way.
speaking of Wyoming. I mean, you probably had some gorgeous scenery along the way.
Yeah. Oh my God. The driving out there is just incredible. And it's just, you feel such a sense of, I think why I love touring on my own. It's like the sense of presence you get when it's just you alone in a place thousands of miles away from anyone you know.
Hmm.
Um, it's just kind of incredible.
Yeah. Do you feel like, aside from kind of this self development that was happening on this trip, that there was also kind of maybe a confidence solidifying in you? Because you're like, "Hey, I'm on the road like for months doing music. I need to put together like a real album to put out here, and kind of, you know, to express who I am now."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think definitely so. I think in terms of confidence building, well, it was definitely right. So there was like kind of this solidified sense of my character and like feeling confident, yeah, in these collections of songs. It's like, this is actually how I want to present myself as an artist to the world. But then also with the show playing, it really strips you of all pride when you're
Mm.
playing some of the weirdest, worst shows of
Mm-hmm.
your life
Uh-huh.
and still enjoying it in a way, because it's like, this is kind of the weirdest and worst it maybe will get as a singer songwriter, and I'm still like fine. I'm like hanging out.
Right, right. So maybe confidence isn't the right word, but certainty in yourself, like
That's
certainty in what you're
definitely
doing.
true.
Right, right. Yeah, so these songs, you were writing them along the way, which is kind of cool. Did I hear you correctly? You were kind of writing them some of these on the road?
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, like Songbird, I remember I woke up in like a Walmart parking lot in Pittsburgh, and
Nice.
this song was kind of in my head, and I had like an afternoon gig somewhere, and I remember just cranking it out like right before. Yeah, and then some of these songs were kind of like melodies I'd like kind of had in the back of my head for a long time, and then revisited, and kind of took months to actually come out and write. But
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, and so you'd write it maybe when you woke up in the parking lot that day, and then you'd perform it like that night or whenever
Oh
you're
no,
playing.
I couldn't do that.
Okay,
That's
I was gonna say that's pretty cool. I mean, uh, but whether or not you played them, the same day or the next day or the following week. How often, how fast was that turnaround when you're writing on the road? Were you waiting until songs that you were writing kind of at the beginning were any of them played later on the tour?
I'm actually not so sure. Maybe, but I like to practice a lot before I play
Right,
things out.
right,
I'm not so great with nerves like remembering things I wrote
right.
kind of
So
recently.
kind of like right on the road, edit at home kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, right.
that's yeah, definitely.
To alter a previous who said write drunk edit sober. Someone said that. I think it was like might have been Hemingway or something like that. I
That's
love
good
that. I love
advice
that
too,
line.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But Izzy's advice is right on the road, edit it and practice at home. So Izzy, it's been a pleasure talking to you. The new album Father came out just a couple weeks ago, October 9th. And you probably had some plans to tour again, but maybe not so much at this very moment. Although, like we said, your style of music does lend itself to maybe some more unconventional venues, maybe some, parks and that sort of thing. Are you thinking about any live situations in the near future, or are you waiting kind of like the rest of the music world for maybe things to start opening up again?
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm okay waiting. I spent a lot of time kind of really grinding away at just playing all the time, and
Hmm.
I'm really trying to take advantage of like, this is the longest I've been in one place since I was like 19.
Yeah.
And it's been really really incredible for my songwriting and like my progression as like an artist. So like we're going back into the studio at the end of this month, and it's kind of like I get to create music that if none of this happened would not be coming out of me at this point, and I would not
Mm.
have the time and
Hmm.
space to kind of cultivate this growth. So I'm trying to keep it in perspective and be thankful for that.
Yeah, silver lining. And you mentioned that this year has been kind of, I mean, aside from mentally for everybody, we were saying it seems like a long, it seems like an extended year, in some regards. Did that perception allow you to write more than you usually do?
What do you mean by that?
Did sitting at home, not much to do, like you said, you've been able to write some songs that you might not otherwise. Have you been
Oh,
written more, even volume wise?
absolutely. So I am creatively in the best space I've ever been in my life, and it is due to kind of the amount of time and space I've had to just learn a lot more about things in music I never thought I'd be doing. So like I said, I never spent time doing production. I
Mm.
actually got like obsessed with production and pop music through all of this. And so I've been listening
Mm,
to a lot of music I never thought I'd be listening to before. And it's kind of, and having the time to do that, it's just kind of made me grow years in advance in such a short period of time because I've just had so much time to sit and focus and learn
yeah.
about new stuff that has pushed my songwriting so much.
Speaking of production, the production on Father is really great. It's just, subtle and understated and just, you know really really pretty. Did you work with anybody on that? I know you said you weren't too focused on production before.
Yeah, so it's actually the studio I do all my stuff at. That's where I'm heading to later tonight to play with my band because we're going back in it soon to crank out some singles for 2021. But it's my dear friend Andy Cass at Sleeper Cave Records. So I live in Western Massachusetts, and my buddy owns this beautiful studio space, and it's like, if anyone's familiar with Western Massachusetts or Massachusetts in general, it's just we have so many old mill buildings that are abandoned. So my
Mm,
buddy gets this incredible space with these windows and this old mill building right on a river, in the
cool.
middle of the forest.
What? That's
And
cool.
it's like, yeah, and we've got a community of wonderful musicians out here. So it's just very easy and relaxed to build these songs up. And I get to spend as much time as I want in the studio without a pressure of like, a high budget, like crazy studio that's like your time is so much money.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny you mentioned that because listening to the album, I could totally picture it being written, played amongst the trees next to a river. It's got that, with the sound of the water playing, trickling next to it. I think it might be lending you some inspiration or vice
oh,
versa.
that's definitely true. No, I've been in Western Mass for about 7 years now, and I don't plan on leaving anytime soon.
Nice. So, Izzy, it's been a pleasure, man. We like to end the interview by asking if you had one piece of advice to offer aspiring artists, what would it be?
I guess just be patient. Things will happen in their time. It's not worth kind of forcing anything inorganically out of you, especially when you're just write the songs that come to you organically. Your growth will happen.
Bringing it backward.